Have you ever felt tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix? Not just exhaustion from work or lack of rest, but something deeper. A kind of weariness that lingers quietly in the background, following you through your day. It doesn't shout, but it's there, a silent companion that makes joy feel muted, success feel hollow, and connection feel just out of reach. You wake up feeling heavy, not because your body aches, but because something inside you feels off. You go through the motions, smiling when needed, delivering what's expected. But somewhere beneath the surface, there's a quiet ache. A question that refuses to go away. Why am I feeling this way? This isn't burnout. This isn't just stress. This is soul tired. And the most disorienting part of this kind of fatigue is that you can't explain it. You look around, and everything seems fine. Maybe your life even looks great on paper: career, relationships, stability. Yet inside, you feel disconnected. The world goes on, but you feel like you're floating just outside of it, watching yourself perform a role you didn't quite choose. Carl Jung understood this feeling more than most. He called it the crisis of the soul, a moment when the life we're living begins to clash with who we truly are underneath. He believed that the psyche soul grows tired when we ignore it for too long. That beneath our surface routines lies an entire inner world, rich and complex, waiting to be seen, heard, and lived. This deep exhaustion is not random. It's not a malfunction. It's a message, a signal from the most authentic part of you. Your soul is tired not because you're weak, not because something is wrong with you, but because you've been living disconnected from yourself for too long. Maybe you've spent years being who others needed you to be. Maybe you've mastered the art of appearing fine while quietly fading inside. Maybe you've buried dreams, silenced instincts, and edited your truth so many times that you no longer recognize your own voice. Jung believed that every part of ourselves we repress, the desires we ignore, the pain we avoid, the truth we're afraid to face gets stored in what he called the shadow. It doesn't disappear. It waits. And eventually, it makes itself known. Not always through drama or breakdowns. Sometimes, it simply shows up as a tiredness that no amount of sleep can fix. Because your soul isn't asking for rest, it's asking for alignment. It's asking you to stop and look at the life you've created. To ask whether it reflects who you truly are, or just who you thought you needed to become, to be accepted. It's asking you to be honest about the relationships that drain you, about the paths that no longer inspire you, about the truths you've been too afraid to speak. This is not weakness. It is awakening. There comes a moment in every journey where the soul refuses to keep living in denial, and it rarely comes with fanfare. It often arrives in silence, in stillness, in the form of deep, inexplicable fatigue. But beneath that fatigue is something sacred, a doorway, a threshold, the beginning of a new kind of honesty. You don't need to panic. You don't need to fix everything overnight. You just need to begin listening, to stop silencing the voice within you that says, "This isn't working. This isn't who I am. I need something different." Asterisk. This tiredness you're feeling, it's not just about today. It's the echo of years of self-abandonment, of putting everyone else first, of trying to fit in, succeed, be enough while neglecting the quiet truths inside you. But here's the miracle. Your soul hasn't given up. It's still whispering. It's still reaching out to you, through the heaviness, through the fog, and that whisper it's saying, "Come home." Asterisk. Not to a place, but to yourself. Your tiredness is not failure. It's feedback. It's the most honest signal your body and psyche can give you that something needs to change. Not because you're broken, but because something deeper is ready to rise. Carl Jung said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And perhaps this moment of fatigue, this soul-deep exhaustion, is the beginning of that privilege. Not a breakdown, but a breakthrough. Because soul tiredness doesn't go away with distraction. It doesn't dissolve with more success, more applause, more noise. It only begins to heal when you slow down enough to feel it, to sit with it, to ask it what it's trying to show you. You don't need more sleep. You need more truth. You need to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You need to stop running from the silence and start listening to what lives inside it. You need to stop striving and start becoming. Because when you live out of alignment for too long, the cost is not just tiredness. The cost is yourself. But the beauty of this moment, the reason you're reading these words right now, is that deep down, you already know this. You've known it for a while, and this is your soul's way of guiding you back. Back to a life that feels like yours. Back to a truth that doesn't exhaust you but energizes you. Back to a way of being that feels like home. This is not the end, it's the beginning. And if your soul is tired, maybe it's because it's finally ready to wake up. There is a dream inside you that has been silenced for far too long. It is not the kind of dream that keeps you awake at night or shows up in visions of success or applause. No, this dream is quieter, older. It is the dream of who you were before you learned to perform. The part of you that existed before the world handed you a script and told you to follow it without question. That dream is still there, and it's tired of waiting. Carl Jung believed that each of us comes into the world with a unique blueprint, a pattern of wholeness that longs to unfold. He called this the process of individuation, the journey of becoming fully, authentically yourself. But the journey is not easy, because from a young age, most of us are taught to trade truth for acceptance. We learn to wear masks. The mask of the good daughter, the reliable partner, the overachiever, the one who always has it together. These masks are praised, rewarded, even celebrated. But beneath them, something essential begins to fade. We don't mean to abandon ourselves. We just do it slowly, quietly, in the name of love, in the name of survival, in the name of being enough. You once had dreams, deep and wild and unfiltered. You once felt wonder, instinct, fire, but over time they were pushed aside, too impractical, too emotional, too inconvenient. You were told to be realistic, to be polite, to fit in. So you edited yourself. And you did it so well, you forgot it was an edit. But now, something inside you is stirring. That forgotten dream, that silenced voice, is beginning to rise. It's not shouting, it's whispering. It's trying to remind you, you were never meant to live a life that didn't belong to you. Your soul is not tired because you've done too much. It's tired because you've been someone you're not. Jung wrote that the parts of ourselves we reject, the raw, wild, emotional, intuitive pieces, do not disappear. They go underground, into what he called the shadow. The shadow is not evil. It is not wrong. It is simply the truth we were too afraid to live. And it waits, patiently, until one day, it knocks. Maybe that knock shows up as sadness you can't explain. As rage, that doesn't seem to fit the moment. As a restlessness that won't let you settle. Or as a longing so deep it makes you ache. These are not flaws. These are signals, clues. The shadow calling out to be seen, to be heard, to be welcomed back home. You are not broken. You are unfinished. You have been living as half of yourself. Half truth, half performance, half instinct, half script. And you're soul-wise, ancient, honestus, tired of pretending. It wants wholeness, not perfection. It wants integration, not applause. It wants you, asterisk. Think about how many times you've said yes when your body screamed no. How often you've smiled when your heart was aching. How many dreams you've postponed to be more practical, more acceptable, more loved. You didn't lose yourself in one moment. You lost yourself in 1,000 quiet compromises. But now the soul is calling back the dream, the real one. The one you buried so deep you stopped believing it was real. You don't have to know what that dream is just yet. You just need to start asking the questions you've been avoiding. Who am I beneath the expectations? Who am I when I stop performing? Who would I be if I trusted the voice inside more than the voices outside? Jung believed that the first step toward becoming whole is facing the shadow, not to fight it, but to understand it. To make peace with the parts of yourself that you've been taught to fear. Your anger has something to tell you. So does your sadness, your envy, your desire. These are not enemies. They are messages. And your tired soul is tired because it's been trying to speak through a language you were never taught to listen to. You are not lost. You are being pulled back toward yourself. This fatigue, this emptiness, it is not failure. It is transition. You're not falling apart. You're shedding. The version of you that the world applauded is no longer enough. And the deeper, truer version is ready to emerge. But it needs space. It needs silence. It needs your permission. Can you remember who you were before the world told you who to be? That memory isn't gone. It's just buried under layers of coping and survival and adaptation. The good news is, your soul hasn't forgotten. And that old dream, the one you put away, because it didn't make sense to anyone else, is still intact. It may be bruised, but it's not broken. It's waiting for you to notice it again. So if you feel disconnected, disoriented, even afraid, don't run. Sit with it. Ask it what it wants you to see. You might be surprised at what answers begin to rise when you finally stop trying to be everything you're not. This is not about becoming someone new. This is about remembering who you've always been. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are exactly where you need to be to start listening, to start removing the masks one by one, to start calling back the pieces you've lost. Because the most important journey you will ever take is not to some distant destination. It is the journey inward, toward the self you abandoned to survive. And when you finally begin to return to that self, the tiredness starts to lift. Not because life gets easier, but because it becomes yours. The dream inside you is not dead. It's just been waiting for your permission to live again. Have you ever really stopped and asked yourself, is this me? Not the version of you who smiles on cue, meets every deadline, says all the right things, but the one underneath, the one that stares at the ceiling in the dark, wondering where the spark went, the one that feels like she's drifting through a life that's supposed to be hers but somehow isn't. This is not just burnout. This is not a rough patch. This is a crisis of self. And it doesn't always arrive with dramatic fanfare. Sometimes it shows up subtly. You cancel plans without knowing why. You stare at your phone, unable to reply to messages from people you once loved. You walk through a crowd and feel entirely alone. You look at your life and think, who built this? And more hauntingly, why does it feel like it's swallowing me? Carl Jung spoke of this moment. He called it the confrontation with the shadow, and he warned, enlightenment doesn't come from imagining figures of light. It comes from making the darkness conscious, from going into the very place we've avoided our entire lives. The parts of us we fear, reject, and hide. The truth is, your soul has been calling for a long time. It doesn't use words. It speaks in discomfort, in discontent, in the sudden and unexplainable ache that something isn't right. And when you don't listen, it doesn't get quieter, it gets louder, until one day your life becomes unlivable. Not because of anyone else, but because you can no longer live split in half. There is a name for what you're going through. It is called initiation. But unlike in stories or myths, this initiation doesn't come with a guide or a clear path. It begins with a breakdown. Not always public, not always dramatic, but something inside you collapses. And in that collapse, all your old coping mechanisms stop working. You stop caring about things you once obsessed over. You stop relating to the people who once made you feel alive. You feel yourself unraveling, and it terrifies you, because no one prepared you for this. No one told you that growth often starts with grief. That becoming whole begins with falling apart. That finding your true self means losing the false one first. It feels like death, because in many ways, it is. The death of the image, the roles, the expectations, the careful scaffolding you built over years, piece by piece, just to feel safe. And now, piece by piece, it's coming down. You try to cling, you try to bargain, you tell yourself you're just tired, you just need a break, a vacation, a new goal, but deep down you know, something deeper is shifting, and it won't let you pretend anymore. This is the descent. In mythology, this moment is often symbolized as entering the underworld, a place of shadows and silence, a place where nothing makes sense and everything hurts. But here's what they don't tell you. It's not punishment. It's the path. Withdrawal is not weakness. It is instinct. Your soul knows you need distance, space, solitude. Not to escape, but to remember. To strip away all the noise so you can finally hear yourself. Because in the world's chaos, your voice got lost. And now, in the silence, it's starting to come back. But silence isn't peaceful at first. It's loud, unforgiving. It echoes with all the things you've been avoiding. The regrets, the disappointments, the truths you pushed down to survive. And now, without distraction, they rise, one by one, demanding to be seen, to be felt, to be integrated. This is not weakness. This is power, Jung wrote. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That's where you are now, in the sacred in-between. No longer who you were, not yet who you are becoming. It feels like hell, but it's the birthplace of everything real. You might cry for no reason. You might feel like you're losing your mind. You might wonder if you'll ever feel normal again. But that version of normal was never real. It was survival. It was compromise. It was half a life. You are not losing your mind. You are losing your illusion. You're learning to stand in your own truth. To face the parts of you that were never given love. To hold space for the sadness, the rage, the fear. And through that holding, you begin to heal. Not in the way the world sells healing, not as a quick fix or 10-step plan, but as a raw, sacred, soul-level transformation. This is shadow work. This is what Jung devoted his life to understanding. It is not glamorous. It doesn't look good on Instagram. It is messy, private, lonely, and yet it is the most courageous thing you will ever do. Because while the world runs from discomfort, you are turning toward it. You are letting it break you open. And in that breaking, something begins to grow. Not immediately, not obviously, but gradually. Like light filtering through cracks you didn't know were there. A new awareness, a deeper presence, a quiet knowing that wasn't there before. You begin to realize, I don't want a life that looks good. I want a life that feels true. You begin to see through the lies you told yourself. That productivity equals worth, that relationships equal identity, that happiness equals performance. You begin to understand. You were never supposed to fit in. You were meant to wake up, and now you are. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's confusing. Yes, people around you may not understand. They may say you've changed, that you're distant, that you're not yourself. And they're right. You're not. You're becoming. This part of the journey is not about answers. It's about courage. The courage to sit in the dark without rushing toward the light. The courage to listen to your own voice, even when it trembles. The courage to not numb, to not run, to not go back. You don't need to know where this is going. You only need to know it's real, and that the path forward is through, not around. So if your soul is calling and you feel like everything in you is resisting, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what am I so afraid of finding? And then ask again, what might I finally find if I stop running? Because behind that fear is truth. Behind the grief is liberation. Behind the breakdown is the beginning of your real life. You don't need to be fearless. You just need to be willing to enter the darkness, to listen, to face what's been buried. Because the soul doesn't call to punish you. It calls to return you, to bring you back to what's essential, what's true, what's yours. And when you have the courage to answer, everything begins to shift. Not all at once, but from the inside out. There comes a moment when the darkness begins to soften, not because everything is fixed, not because the answers have arrived, but because something inside you has shifted. You are no longer fighting the silence. You are listening to it. This is the beginning of your return. The breakdown, the withdrawal, the aching solitude, they were not detours, they were thresholds. And though you crossed them alone, you are not leaving alone. You are leaving with something far more valuable than anything the world could have handed you. You are leaving with yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who you were taught to be, not who others expected, but who you are beneath the masks, beyond the wounds, before the world told you what to fear." When the soul calls, it doesn't ask for performance. It doesn't require perfection. It asks for presence, for honesty, for willingness. You gave it that. You entered the fire, not to be destroyed, but to be transformed. This is not the end of the story. This is the resurrection, a slow, quiet rebirth. No one else may notice it yet, but you feel it, in the way you breathe deeper, in the way you say no without guilt, in the way you look at yourself and, for the first time in a long time, feel something close to peace. You no longer crave noise because silence no longer frightens you. You no longer chase love because you've begun to recognize it within. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you've finally understood yourself. You are not becoming someone new. You are becoming someone ancient, someone true, someone whole. Healing isn't always loud. Sometimes it looks like taking a long walk without headphones. Sometimes it sounds like turning down the voice that says you're behind. Sometimes it feels like choosing rest when the world screams hustle. There is no formula for this part of the journey. No 5 steps, no checklist, no guarantee. But what guides you now is trust. A trust not built on logic or evidence, but on a deep inner knowing. You've touched something real. You've felt your soul stir. And you cannot go back to sleep. Let that be enough. Let your quiet rebirth be sacred. Let your softness be your strength. Let your return be gentle. Because true transformation does not force. It allows. It doesn't demand. It listens. It doesn't shout. It whispers. You are learning to live from the inside out. You don't have to explain your journey to anyone. You don't have to rush to rebuild. The most radical thing you can do now is to continue choosing yourself in small moments, in quiet decisions, in how you hold your own heart. You have faced the shadow. You have stood in the fire. You have walked through the silence. And now, you are rising not as someone else, but as more of who you've always been. So take your time. Let this be the season where you return to your roots, where you create space for what matters, where you stop trying to be impressive and instead choose to be aligned. If your soul has been whispering, "I want to come home," let this be your answer. And if you felt something stir while reading this, an ache, a remembering, a breath you didn't realize you were holding, then perhaps your return has already begun. You are not alone in this journey. There are others walking beside you, quietly, bravely, inwardly. So, if you feel called, let this be your first step. Leave a comment below and write, "I'm coming home." Not for me, not for validation, but for yourself. Let that be the first sentence in the chapter where you begin to live from your soul again. You don't need to know the whole path. You just need to take the next step. And that step is the most sacred thing you will ever do.